Hi, I'm Russ Barlow.
I'm Sophie.
I'm Seth.
And I'm Joe.
These are the last 3 of my 15 kids, and I'm taking them back. We're going to study the Book of Mormon.
We'll be using the Come Follow Me schedule. We're glad you're here sharing our journey.
Come along with us.
Welcome back to part 2.2. This is Come Follow Me, chapters 1 through 5, and we're just going to get into the second part, which is the brass plates. Retrieving the brass plates. Nephi has been praying to the Lord, and he goes back to the tent of his father. He's going to go talk to him about probably this experience that he's had, that he's seen the Lord. And as he walks in the door, his father says something.
And it came to pass, he spake unto me, saying, Behold, I have dreamed a dream, in which the Lord hath commanded me that thou and thy brethren shall return to Jerusalem.
For behold, Laban hath the record of the Jews, and also a genealogy of my forefathers, and they are engraven upon the plates of brass.
We want you to go get the plates of brass. And what's on this? It's a permanent book, by the way. There are books that are written on parchment. There are books that are written on animal skins. But this is engraved on brass because it's the permanent record. Mm-hmm. And it's also, Laban is a family member somehow. We don't know what his relationship is, but he's family because a genealogy of the Lehi family is on these plates.
Yep. And now, behold, my brothers murmur, saying, It is hard thing which I have required them. But behold, I have not required of it.
But it is a commandment of the Lord.
You can understand that while this is happening, Nephi is in there praying to the Lord and having an experience while his father's talking to the older boys about, I need you to go do this job. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, no, we're not going to go do this job. It's too hard. And Lehi's saying, I didn't ask him to do it. The Lord did. Mm-hmm. Therefore, go, my son, and thou shalt be favored of the Lord, because you have not murmured.
And it came to pass that I, Nephi.
Now this is like the most famous of all the scriptures in the Book of Mormon, right?
I will go and
do the things the Lord commandeth. For I know that the Lord giveth no commandment unto the children of men, save he shall prepare a way for them, that they may accomplish the thing which he hath commanded them.
There's one word that comes to my mind when I read that, though. One word. Perseverance. Mm-hmm. Because this isn't going to be an easy task. And he did not say that I will go and do the things the Lord commanded because I know that the Lord will make it easy for us to accomplish it. He just said,
I will go and do because the Lord commanded.
Because the Lord commanded. And I know he doesn't command us things that we can't do. Mm-hmm. When my father heard these words, he was exceedingly glad, for he knew that I had been blessed of the Lord.
And I, Nephi, and my brethren, took our tents to go up to the land of Jerusalem.
And it came to pass that when we had gone up to the land of Jerusalem, me and my brethren did consult one with another.
So all the boys are around, and they're deciding, okay,
how are we going to do this?
How are we going to do this? And they come up with an idea.
We cast lots.
Cast lots. One of you has to go, the rest of us are going to wait. So they cast lots, and who gets the first
And
chance?
the lot fell upon Laman.
Laman.
And Laman went into the house of Laban, and he talked with him, and he sat in his house. And he desired of Laban the records which were engraved upon the plates of brass.
So they didn't really have a plan. They just, all right, Laman, go talk to Laban, see what you can get out of him.
That's right.
Which contained the genealogy.
And he knows him.
Oh.
I don't know if it's an uncle or a cousin or somebody. He knows him.
Mm-hmm.
So he shows up in this guy's house. He's pretty well-to-do. He's obviously a warrior that leads other men. And he's going to walk in and say, you know those brass plates?
Can we have them?
I need them. How did Laban receive him?
It came to pass that Laban was angry, and thrust him out of his presence, and he would not that he should have the records. Wherefore he said unto him, Behold, thou art a robber, and I will slay thee.
Yep.
Oh, you're here to rob me. Get out of here. I'm going to slay you.
Laman fled out of his presence, and told the things which Laban had done. And we began to be exceedingly sorrowful, and my brethren were about to return unto my father in the wilderness.
Okay, one chance.
Oh, I tried.
No.
Let's go home.
We're done.
But behold, I said unto them, As the Lord liveth, and as we live, we will not go down to our father into the wilderness until we have accomplished the thing which the Lord has commanded us.
Perseverance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wonder if the reason that mom and dad asks their kids to do things that are hard is so that they can have an opportunity to come back and say, I couldn't find it. And dad can say, go look again, it's there.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times when they can't find it, and dad goes up and says, it's right here. Ever have that happen?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yes.
All the
You
time.
going crazy.
Nephi says, let us be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord.
So they went all the way back to their house. Nephi had an idea. And it came to pass that they went down to the land of their inheritance.
Of their father's inheritance.
And they gathered the gold and the silver and their precious things. And after, they went to Laban. And it came to pass that we went into Laban.
So before you get there, let's just talk about that.
Okay.
You know, they show these pictures as if there's like gold cups laying on the ground and there's stuff laying. I don't think so.
No, I think it's more like
It's more like hidden in that thing.
my mama's jewelry.
And I think that there was actual money.
Mm-hmm.
It has gold and silver and precious things. And it's in order.
Yeah.
And it came to pass that we went unto Laban, and desired him that he would give us the records which were engraven upon the plates of brass, for which we would give him our gold and our silver and our precious things. And it came to pass that when Laban saw our property, and that it was exceedingly great, he did lust after it, insomuch he did thrust us out, and sent his servants to slay us, that he might obtain our property. And it came to pass, we did flee before the servants of Laban, and we were obliged to leave behind our property, and it fell into the hands of Laban.
I'd like to make a comment before we get to this about the wisdom of God. In verse 19 it says, and behold, it is wisdom in God that we should obtain these records, that we may preserve unto our children the language of our fathers. Remember back in Old Testament Genesis, one of the commandments that God gave to Adam, that the sons of Adam continued to do, was to write in a book of remembrance, and to use the book of remembrance to teach their children. And that book of remembrance was written by the finger of the Lord. So in other words, he showed them how to write this. The brass plates are a continuation about that. And it says that they would need these to preserve the language of our fathers. Not just us, but all of our fathers all the way back. How are we going to preserve the language and the stories if we don't actually have them written down? I would like to ask, how will your children know about your stories in life if you don't write them down? How will your grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren? They'll never remember the stories because they won't have heard them unless you write them down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a commandment that the Lord has given since the days of Adam, to write your stories down. And that's what they're talking about here, not just the language, but the stories of our fathers that are on these brass plates. And it says in verse 20, that we may preserve unto them the words which have been spoken by the mouth of the holy prophets. So we're not just preserving stories, but we're preserving prophecies. And it says, these have been delivered to them by the Spirit and power of God since the world began. Okay, so when is that?
Since Adam.
Since Adam. Would that include the prophecies of Noah?
Yep.
How about Enoch?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Isaiah?
Mm-hmm.
And all these prophecies. So this is a really valuable book.
So literally, people have been writing down their thoughts, their prophecies, their thoughts, their everything since the beginning of time.
And that commandment still exists for us today, doesn't
and
it?
it's a commandment, yeah.
To write your stories in a journal. Coming back to where Seth read, okay, so the property now has fallen into the hands of Laban, and they fled into the wilderness, and they hid in the cavity of a rock.
So their plan did not work.
Did not work.
It came to pass.
Second time.
Right.
Then what happens? Now the brothers are pretty upset. They're mad. Laman and Lemuel are
They just
really mad.
lost all the best things they have. They just lost.
Not only did they leave it, now they lost it.
Yeah, and they still don't have the brass plates.
And Laman and Lemuel did speak many hard words unto us, their younger brothers, and they did smite us, even with a rod. And it came to pass, as they smote us with a rod, behold, an angel of the Lord came and stood before them. And he spake unto them, saying, Why do you smite your younger brother with a rod?
What would you do if you were like slugging Joe and an
I mean,
angel came and
It's kind of
said,
understandable, though, why Laman and Lemuel would be. I mean, really, Nephi? Come on now. You just made us lose all of our most precious things.
so you think they're kind of semi-justified in getting mad at Nephi?
No. I'm just saying it's understandable.
It's
Because
understandable.
you've been in that position before where it's like, why did you have to do that?
I've
to
been in
your
that
little
position
brother.
when kids have wrecked my cars or when they've done stuff like
See, yeah.
electric bombs, and blow things up.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, little brother. You had to go do that. And now all of our most precious things are gone and we
Except for they
still
weren't kind
haven't
like
done
that.
it.
Have you ever had an older brother like beating you with maybe not a rod, but
I know.
something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe they were a little extreme with the rod.
And it came to pass that, as an angel came, anyway, he said,
If an angel showed up when you're about to hit Joe with a rod, what would you do? What would you think?
like, finally, I'll tell you what I should do.
Somebody stopped me? Or are you talking about if an older brother was beating you with a rod, what would you do?
Both things. I'd be like, finally, someone stopped him. And then I'd be like, this is great. I can finally see an angel. And then, if I was beating him up, I'd be like, yeah, Joe, look.
How did Laman and Lemuel receive the angel?
No,
Probably.
Verse 31, what'd they do immediately?
and after the angel had departed, Laban
Murmur.
began to murmur, saying, how is it possible the Lord will deliver
Soul.
Laban into our hands? Behold, he is a mighty man, and he can command 50. Yea, even he can slay 50, and why not us?
So basically, Laman and Lemuel complain about this, complain about that, complain.
Even
The
after
angels-
they saw an angel,
Right, the
they
angel stops
still
them.
murmur against the Lord.
So here's an angel saying, you're not going to beat up on your brother anymore. Now go do what he says.
First of all, imagine beating your brother so bad that you had to have an angel come and stop you. That's crazy.
Nephi's just lucky.
All right, so murmuring brothers, they've all seen an angel, so they all know. Nephi's emboldened.
And
he's
favorite
like, done.
verse
Your favorite verse?
in chapter 4.
Okay, is?
And it came to pass, I spake unto my brethren, saying, Let us go up again unto Jerusalem, and let us be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord. For behold, he is mightier than all the earth, and why not mightier than Laban and his 50, or yea, even his tens of thousands?
Yeah, I agree. Why, right? The angel comes to protect the unfortunate younger brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? The Lord sends us to do that. Laban's puny. He's just a man.
Compared to the Lord. Mm-mm.
And he goes up and he says to his brothers, he said, therefore let us go up and be strong like Moses. Moses stood and says, he truly spoke to the waters of the Red Sea, and they divided hither and thither.
And our fathers, okay.
And they came across out of captivity on dry ground. And the armies of Pharaoh did follow, and what happened to them?
And they were drowned in the waters of the Red Sea.
The entire army of Pharaoh.
Was
So,
killed.
and Nephi reminds him, he says, behold, you know that this is true, and you also know that an angel has spoken to you. Wherefore can you doubt? Let us go up. The Lord's able to deliver us, even as our fathers, and to destroy Laban, even as the Egyptians.
Nevertheless, I went forth, and as I came near to the house of Laban, I beheld a man, and he was fallen to the earth before me, and he was drunken with wine. And when I came to him, I found that it was a Laban. And I beheld a sword, and I drew it from the sheath, and thereof, and the hilt of thereof was of pure gold, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. And I saw that the blade thereof was the most precious steel.
I always have thought about this. You come up, and the first thing you talk about is not what he's dressed like, not, hey, there's Laban. It's just that, oh, I got to check this sword out. This is a man who knows his swords. Clearly, he knows how to make swords, so he knows a good sword. He's a metallurg. He's a forger. And so he sees the workmanship of the sword, and he, in detail, is describing the hilt and the blade, the most precious steel.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives this whole chapter of that, except in the verse before it just simply says, and I came to him and I found it was Laban.
And
It's like a boy obsessing over like something like, and then I saw this sword,
And it's
so
gold,
cool.
and it's...
it came to pass that I was
Oh, he's
constrained
looking
by
at
the
it.
Spirit that I should kill Laban.
Okay, now think
That's
about this for a
scary.
minute. I pulled this sword and I'm looking, I'm just kind of, this is really a cool sword. And then all of a sudden the Spirit says to me, kill him.
That's crazy. Okay, first of all, me personally, I would be thinking that's from the devil. You should kill Laban. No.
But I said in my heart, never at any time have I shed the blood of man, and I shrunk that I may not slay him.
And the Spirit said unto me again,
Behold, the Lord hath delivered him into your hands. Yea, and I also knew that he had sought to take away my own life. Yea, and he would not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord. And he also wanted to take away our property. So it came to pass that the Spirit said unto me, Slay him, for the Lord hath delivered him into your hands.
this
So,
is the third time.
Yeah, and Nephi's literally out here thinking, okay, he's like, it's like the cons and pros. What's the pros if I do this? What's the cons if I do this?
Behold,
Right.
the Lord's...
And this is verse 13. Now there's something we'll talk about here, but this is the final reasoning that Nephi has. Behold,
The Lord slayeth the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. It is better that one man should perish than a whole nation dwindle and perish in unbelief.
I find that the Book of Mormon is often this whole kind of story of counterpoints or of opposites. And that's actually part of everything that we do on our tours. We talk about these things because here it is. The Lord slays the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. It's better that one man should perish than a nation should dwindle and unbelief.
That's like for good and bad too. Like.
So
one
why
man-
is Charles Lyell? Why did he live? Or Charles Darwin? Or Marx? Or Huxley?
Or Anthony Fauci.
Or Anthony Fauci? Why does the Lord allow such diabolical wickedness still to come on the earth today and doesn't just wipe them out? So there's always more to the story, as if the whole thing has to be planned out in such a way the Lord wants us to know something. And here we are in this time, the Lord wants Laban slain and sent home to him. It's time for Laban to come home and report. Nephi is sending him back to his God to report. Laban, I sent these young men to go get that record. Well, when Nephi had heard these words, he remembered the words of the Lord. Okay, so the Spirit is telling him this. The Spirit is saying, the Lord slays the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. And when I, Nephi, had heard these words, I remembered the words of the Lord, which he spoke unto me in the wilderness, saying that, inasmuch as thy seed shall keep my commandments, they shall prosper in the land of promise. And I thought they couldn't keep the commandments unless they had the law of Moses, which was written on the brass plates. They were keeping the law of Moses, and the law of Moses was a precursor law. It wasn't even the whole law. But yet Nephi and Lehi and all of his children after him would be diligent in keeping the law of Moses until the Savior would come, 600 years later.
Verse 18, Therefore I did obey the voice of the Spirit, and took Laban by the hair of the head, and I smote off his head with his own sword. And after I had smitten off his head with his own sword, I took the garments of Laban, and put them upon my own body, yea, even every whit. And I did gird on his armor about my loins. And after I had done this, I went forth to the treasury of Laban. And as I went forth towards the treasury of Laban, behold, I saw the servant of Laban, who had the keys of the treasury. And I commanded him, the voice of Laban, that he should come with me to go into the treasury.
All right, so in your best Laban voice, I want to hear you command this man.
Come with me into the treasury.
Okay, so he's not speaking in his own voice. And we actually are going to learn about that later. He is speaking as if he's mimicking Laban.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
Large in
Power of
stature.
God.
But
And
you can speak
still
with
somehow
authority.
pull off the whole looking. I mean, they have different faces unless they were identical twins or something.
He also has
So
a
we know
beard
that it's
color.
nighttime.
Mm.
Okay, and he spoke to me. He supposed me to be his master Laban, for behold the garments and the sword. This is a well-known sword. this sword that's got a gold hilt. Now, there's not very many like that one. That's why Nephi was admiring it, because the sword is really fine. It's the kind that only the captain or the person on top would be wearing. He spoke to me many times concerning the elders of the Jews, he knowing that his master Laban had been out among them at night. That's how we know it's night. Late enough that they've been out, that he's had plenty of wine.
And he spake to me concerning the elders of the Jews, knowing that his master Laban, and I spake unto him as if it had been Laban. And I also spake unto him that I should carry the engravings which were upon the plates of brass to my elder brethren, who were without the walls.
So he just played along. He thought they were talking about the elders. Yeah, get those plates and bring them to my elder brethren.
And I also bade him that he should follow me. And he, supposing that I spake of the brethren of the church, and that I was truly that Laban whom I had slain, wherefore he did follow me. And he spake unto me many times concerning the elders of the Jews, as I went forth unto my brethren who were without the wall.
He's talking, this is an ongoing conversation. He's speaking about things, about the elders, what they would say, maybe about whatever the worship practices, whatever the things were going on in politics or society. This is an ongoing conversation that Nephi has to carry on. So he has to speak maturely, not just in a voice, but also in the words he uses. Nephi could not have done that if he hadn't been a highly sophisticated, educated man, taught in all the language of his fathers. This is where part of that comes to play, right?
Yeah.
He's already a well-versed, kind of like you, Seth. You can go talk to just about anybody because you're really a smart guy. You can kind of go talk to anybody about stuff. Something's going to happen right here, though. He can't speak in Laban's voice to his brothers, because what do his brothers think? They know who Laban is. He's already sought to kill him twice, and here he comes back. He's got all this stuff, and he's got another guy with him.
It came to pass that I called after them.
And they did hear me, wherefore they did cease to flee from my presence. But the moment that he calls out to him,
And it came to
what
pass
happens
that
to
the
the guy
servant
with
of
him?
Laban
He's
beheld my brethren, he began to tremble.
And it was about to flee from before me and return to the city of Jerusalem.
And now I, Nephi, being a man large in stature, and also have received much strength from the Lord, therefore I did seize upon the servant of Laban, and held him that he should not flee.
Okay, so this has got to be just, imagine, it's got to be perfect. No, Laman and Lemuel, it's me. And then he's got to grab him, who's got the plates, subdue him, and get all this kind of in order. He's got to convince his brothers that he's not really Laban, and he's got to convince him that he's got to come with him. And he says, I made an oath that he need not fear, that he should be a free man like unto us if he would go down into the wilderness with us. Which tells us he was what kind of a person in Laban's household.
He was a servant. He was a slave.
He was a slave. He was an indentured servant or a slave.
And if he had gone back to
wasn't
go
free.
be like, Laban's dead, then he would have been blamed for it.
He's kind of in a quandary. If I go back, he could be in a lot of trouble too. These guys are offering me freedom. And it came to pass, and it says his name was Zoram. It came to pass that Zoram did take courage, which the Lord's which I spake. Now Zoram was the name of the servant. This is the first time that we learn his name. And he also made an oath unto us that he would tarry with us from that time forth. So you're free, you're not a slave, but you can't go anywhere.
So you're free, but you're not free.
You're trading one for another. But there's more freedom that's going to come here. And he actually becomes a good friend of Nephi. Zoram becomes one of his really good, trusted friends. Now we were desirous that he would tarry with us for the cause that the Jews might not know concerning our flight into the wilderness, that they should pursue us and destroy us. When Zoram had made an oath, our fears did cease concerning him, and it came to pass that we took the plates of brass, and we departed into the wilderness. How many days did we take to get home?
3.
3 days.
3.
Okay. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, what's happening? Mother Sariah is very upset. She has complained against her husband.
Because
She
For he
thinks
said
all of her sons are dead.
For she had supposed that we had perished in the wilderness. And she also had complained against my father, telling him he was a visionary man, saying, Behold, thou hast led us forth unto the land of our inheritance, and my sons are no more, and we perish in the wilderness.
So she's really concerned like a mother would be. You've sent all 4 of my sons back to Jerusalem, and now they're perished and they're dead. We've left all of
So
our
she's
stuff, our
just-
gold and silver. She's
a
just being a
worried
mom.
mom.
To this manner of language had my mother complained against my father.
And how did her
And
husband deal with it?
My father spake unto her, saying, I know I am a visionary man. For if I had not seen the things of God in a vision, I should not have known the goodness of God, but had tarried at Jerusalem and had perished with my brethren. So he's comforting her by saying,
Honey, I know.
yeah.
I know I'm a visionary man, but if we hadn't done this, we'd perish. And he says,
But behold,
look at the promise that he says to her.
I have obtained a land of promise, in which things I do rejoice, yea, and I know that the Lord will deliver my sons out of the hands of Laban, and will bring them down unto us in the wilderness.
Don't you like? He's kind of like speaking in an English tongue now. Oh, I like that, Seth. After this manner of language did my father Lehi comfort my mother Sariah concerning us while we journeyed in the wilderness up to the land of Jerusalem. So they're gone for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it takes 3 days to get there. They've made the attempt more than once. They've had to go get all their stuff.
And clearly it looks like it's been
It's
about 3 days.
Well,
Oh, it's
it's
been
3
more than
days just to
3
get
days.
there and 3 days to get back. So we know that even travel time's 6
I know,
days.
3 days that they've spent there
Yeah.
in Jerusalem.
So there's a good chance it's been a month by the time they get back. By the time they get up there, do all their operations. Remember, they still have to eat and they still have to get food and provisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go for days and days and days without eating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
And it's after this manner of language my father Lehi did comfort my mother Sariah concerning us. And when we had returned to the tent of my father, behold, their joy was full, and my mother was comforted. She can rest again.
And she spake, saying, Now I know of a surety that the Lord hath commanded my husband to flee into the wilderness, yea, and I also know of a surety that the Lord hath protected my sons and delivered them out of the hands of Laban, and given them power whereby they could accomplish the thing which the Lord hath commanded them. And after this manner of language she did speak.
I think it's also interesting how this experience is actually for the family too. In other words, Lehi didn't just leave, but he left, paused, had them go back so that their mother could get on board entirely that, okay, yep, I see that now. So the Lord is actually leading them each along in their various ways. Nephi is getting to learn a little bit more about being bold. Laman and Lemuel keep getting opportunities to repent and come on board, but they're not. Mother, Sariah, she's also coming on board little by little, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did they do after they're all back now and everything's fine? In verse 9 it says, It came to pass they did rejoice exceedingly.
And they did offer sacrifice and burnt offerings unto the Lord, and they gave thanks unto the God of Israel. And after they had given thanks unto the God of Israel, my father, Lehi, took the records which were engraven upon the plates of brass, and he did search them from the beginning.
What was the first thing he read then? The creation account, the 5 books of Moses. He would have read the entire account of creation.
And he
Yeah.
beheld that they did contain the 5 books of Moses, which gave an account of the creation of the world, and also of Adam and Eve, who were our first parents.
I've often talked about how in every case the Lord always starts with the creation. Like, for example, when later on in the Book of Mormon we're going to meet that Ammon goes and talks to King Lemhi, and he begins with the creation. And this happens multiple times where the Lord begins with creation. Nephi says later on, we also learn that he says, you have the record of the Jews, so I'm not going to repeat everything here. Because he just told us what is on the brass plates, so that they actually had. What did they start with their learning then?
The creation.
The creation account. Every one of their children were taught the creation account with Adam and Eve and how and why the world was created.
Mm-hmm.
They were given the wisdom that had been carried down from Adam. It starts right here in the Book of Mormon. The most important book that we have is the Book of Genesis, which is the creation account.
Mm-hmm.
Everything here is based actually on that. And we have Joseph Smith's translation of that creation account. Most of it's in the Book of Moses. And it's a fantastic record. We should always go back to that and begin there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, verse 14 it says, "It came to pass my father also found on the plates of brass a genealogy of his fathers, wherefore he knew that he was a descendant of Joseph,
Yay.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph."
Mm-hmm.
Now Joseph is actually two tribes. What are the two tribes that come from him?
Ephraim and Manasseh.
Ephraim and Manasseh had their own place in the Israel territory. Joseph's was divided up, and yet Joseph was given a different blessing. So Ephraim got a blessing, Manasseh got a blessing, but Joseph was given a blessing himself. He was given a special blessing, and his blessing is that his seed would go up and over the wall, which means they would cross the waters. And here we have an example of the seed of Joseph going across the waters into the promised land. Now there's one last thing before we close up our part 2, and that is verse 18. I think this is really powerful, Joe.
That these plates of brass should go forth unto all nations, kindreds, tongues, and people who were of his seed.
Whose seed is he speaking of?
Lehi's seed.
Lehi's seed, okay? And it says, "Now when my father began to see all these things, he was filled with the Spirit and began to prophesy concerning his seed, that his entire seed would eventually have what's on the plates of brass that this would go for." So we have the gold plates here, but the things on the brass plates were given the promise that Lehi promised they would go to his seed also. And the plates of brass should never perish, neither should they be dimmed any more by time. We don't have them, but they exist.
Wherefore he said that these plates of brass should never perish, neither should they be dimmed any more by time. And he prophesied many things concerning his seed.
And it came to pass that thus far I and my father had kept the commandments wherewith the Lord had commanded us. So he's kind of bringing this record to a close. We've left Jerusalem and we've gone back to get the plates, and now I'm bringing that to a close. And it says right here, wisdom. We talk about wisdom and knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. Verse 22, "Wherefore it was wisdom in the Lord that we should carry them with us as we journeyed in the wilderness toward the land of promise." And that's the end of our part 2. We'll see you next time on Take Back Your Kids and Come Follow Me.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.